Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Things Aviation and Aerospace. I'm Vince Mickens with Private Air Media Group. I am smiling big time today because it's going to be a fun show. I've been on pre-show with the AeroShell Aerobatic Team. Say that 3 times really fast. And we've been having a great conversation. Of course, when you get a bunch of pilots together and we start talking, we've all got stories to tell, and they're usually pretty interesting and pretty enlightening. So we could have done that as a show by itself, but we are here today to talk about aerobatic flying and airshow performing, and hear the history of this team, the AeroShell Aerobatic Team, and how it was formed, and then hear about each of the pilots and their involvement. So I'm going to, go ahead and get right into it. Introduce everybody. I'm hearing an echo. I hope we figure that out because I don't think it's me. But anyhow, let's start out with introducing everybody. We'll start with Steve Gustafson. He's left wing for the AeroShell team. We have Jimmy Fordham, who is slot, and Bryan Regan, who is right wing. Unable to join us today, but we're sending him best wishes. Mark Henley, who is the lead pilot. Mark, hope everything's well, and sorry you couldn't be here to have all this fun with us today. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Vince.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. It's really going to be fun to talk about this. I wanted to really kind of set the table with this by going back to first of all, how the AeroShell team was formed, aerobatic team was formed, where it came from, the idea to do it. It had it was called the North American Aerobatic Team initially, right?
That's correct.
And then was changed. So maybe we can start with you, Steve, and you can take us all the way back to how this whole idea came about. That's now something that everybody looks forward to at all the air shows.
Well, it actually was my father's idea. He used to fly with a guy with the same T-6 that I had, and he passed away in a non-aviation accident, and I always wanted to try.
Steve, I'm going to interrupt you because you are definitely echoing from. There's still something coming from your voice.
I see that, and it didn't do that earlier. Let me try to turn this off.
Sure.
Anyway, test 1 2. That's weird.
So we're hearing it from your speaker. Is there a way to turn your monitor down?
That's what I'm looking for. Let me try this.
I was not doing it earlier for the entire time we were in pre-show.
All right, how's that? Is that better?
Yeah, that's a little better.
It is. Okay.
So go ahead.
But anyway, I decided to try it with Alan Henley and fly on his wing. And he said, sure. And in those days, you didn't have to document it 25 times before flying in front of an air show. And the next day, we flew it in the air show.
Okay.
And it snowballed. One of the air bosses saw it and said, hey, you guys come up here to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And we did. And John D. Rockefeller III was in the crowd. And he came over to us. He said, man, I've never seen anybody do that in T6s before. How about come fly Petty Jean Mountain, Arkansas to my Bluegrass Festival? And we did. And it just started snowballing. We found out we could fly more air shows as a team than we could fly individually. And
so was it 4 aircraft at that time?
At that time it was only 3.
Okay.
And we did that. We flew as a 3-ship for about 12 years. But we all had jobs. We all had different things. I was crop dusting and farming. Everybody was doing their own thing. We kind of did this on the side.
Okay.
And when the 4-ship came about, because we finally ended up having four of us. The four of us used to rotate whenever somebody would get real busy. And then later in life, you know, you get where you can kind of start doing like you want to do. And what ends up happening, you got four of us. So we all ended up flying together one time, and we practiced it, and then we went, put it in an air show, and then it was born then. I mean, when the four ship came about, and AeroShell came on board and gave us a name and a face. And when they came on board, it really snowballed in.
Yeah. Why the T-6? Where did the whole, you know, the T-6 come from as being the aircraft of choice?
I'm going to answer this like Mark would have, because we had one.
So there was no real strategy with it. You had a T-6, and that's what it was.
In air shows, and he had it, so I took advantage of it, and it's just a really good air show airplane because it's big enough, but it's maneuverable enough. Makes a lot of noise and smoke, and the formation stuff came about. I used to fly with the CAF a lot, younger, and then so I got my formation work there. And then when we did the aerobatic part, it's challenging in these airplanes. These airplanes, that's why you don't see many people doing what we do in these airplanes. Not saying that they're not capable, not saying they can't do it, but it takes a lot of dedication, a lot of work. You have to really want to do this, because we've had some really seasoned T6 guys come in and they got very frustrated because they can't do it in 2 days. And we just have to encourage them and say, listen, you know, we don't have anything you don't have except experience. And in life, that's always the dividing factor that separate the people with the experience, you know, the pilots that have been there and done that.
Yeah. You know, well, first of all, what your history of flying, what got you into flying? How'd you get started that led up to all of this that you're now doing?
Yeah,
you mentioned crop dusting. So, but where did you start? Where's the seed?
I took my first flying lesson in a Cub when I was 12. And I soloed the T6 that I'm flying with the team when I was a junior in high school. And I think the only reason my dad soloed me in it because he needed a ferry pilot to take it from air show to air show. And next thing you know, I started flying it a bunch, and then I started doing aerobatics in it. And I did my first air show when I was 19.
So you started in the air show business really early.
Pretty early. I'm 61. So what is that? 4 years ago.
So was that something you always wanted to do? You know, I'm always curious as to how people decide how they end up in an air show career, because that's what it is for you. You've been in an aerobatic flying career now for most of your adult life.
Yeah, I've never really wanted to do it full time. I just it fell into my lap. I guess I got it the easy way. A lot easier than a lot of people, because my dad had one and he also had the experience and the knowledge to train me in the T6. And so I've just took advantage of it, and I enjoyed it. Now I really enjoy formation aerobatics. I mean, if you want to fly aerobatics, that's one thing. But when you start flying 6 and 8 feet off someone's wing, doing formation, barrel rolls and loops, and then add at night,
yeah,
that's a whole nother level.
It's a whole nother level, and you're trusting the other guys that you're flying with. Jimmy, how about you? How'd you get started in aerobatic flying?
Actually, aerobatic flying I started flying when I was in high school, like Steve. I was 14, and my dad had learned to fly after the war on the GI Bill. He was an instructor, and I took advantage of that. And I remember I was going to solo on my 16th birthday, and we went to Kilgore, Texas, Gregg County Airport, and there was a guy there that had a Cessna 150 Aerobat. And I went up with him, and that was kind of part of my birthday present was this aerobatic lesson. And I was just crazy about it. I thought this was the neatest thing I've ever done. And, but I was a kid and, had high school, I was playing football, doing other things besides flying. And, but when I got 17, I got my private. When I was 18, got my commercial and multi and seaplane flight instructor. So I walked into college with, basically a sophomore. And I kept thinking about aerobatics. I knew I wanted to fly for the airlines. I thought at least that's what I felt like. That's where I wanted to go. And but I love the aerobatic aspect of things. And Marion Cole lived in Shreveport, Louisiana, and him and Art Show had just got the first 2-place Pitts aircraft. And this is back in I want to say 75 is when that was. And I went over there and I took a lesson with Marion, and that was just pouring more fuel on the fire, because then I really wanted to do it. And, I was just married, I didn't have a penny to my name. Anyway, I ended up buying a midget Mustang off of Marion Cole, and it was the original long midget Mustang. And it's in the museum up at Oshkosh now. And flew that airplane. And then I met Steve's dad, Merle Gustafson. And we used to fly some shows together. We didn't do 20 shows or anything like that during this 75 through 79 timeframe. But Merle encouraged me to, hey man, you need to do this. You like it, and fun to be around, you can do this. And between him and Marion and flying some shows with them, and that put the bug in me. And then you got to go make a living and eat. And I kind of shut the whole thing down in 79 and early 80 and went back to corporate flying and working on getting hired with the airlines. But that's what put the bug was Steve's dad and Marion and that ride, when I was a kid at 16 years old. And I knew it's something I always wanted to do. And got through the airline career and I decided kids were grown and I was flying a helicopter over at Tallulah, Louisiana, what we call our hometown air show. And I was topping rides in a helicopter. And Steve and them were flying the team. Gene McNeely was flying the 4-ship. He was the slot pilot. And I got to meet all those guys. And I bought a Yak 52. And Steve became my aerobatic mentor. He, said, Jimmy, I will help you get your cards and you work at it and keep going. And so, I did. And eventually I felt like I was ready, and Steve issued my first card to me, and I started flying air shows, started going out and flying the Yak and doing solo aerobatics. And then I eventually met some other guys on the Yak, and we did some formation aerobatics. And Steve knew this. He knew that, I was starting to get into it. And the way I came about on the team is Gene McNeely was going to be out for about a year or so with a medical issue that he had to get taken care of. And they invited me to, hey, Jimmy, we think we may want to have you come over here and help us for a year. And, we survived that year. I'll put it that way. But I didn't have it about, I think Bryan, when Bryan led the team the first time, and he'll tell you this, he can correct me, but I think when he led the AeroShell Aerobatic Team, he had about an hour and a half, 2 hours in a T-6. But he had thousands of hours of formation aerobatics. Well, I showed up 60 hours and I didn't have hardly any formation aerobatics. So they put me in the front. And they will tell you right quick, he was just the front airplane. He wasn't number one. We were telling him where to go all the time, but it worked out, and we got through that first year. Gene came back and started flying with the team full time. And they said, hey, we want you to keep working with us. So like Steve said earlier, it takes a lot of dedication, a lot of hard work to get to where we're at today.
Absolutely.
And so I kept working. I would go do rides with them and help them out anywhere I could. I fueled airplanes, smoke all the airplanes. I learned the whole team concept about how AeroShell ran.
Yeah, yeah.
That was important.
We'll talk about that. I wanted to give Bryan a chance to jump in there since you brought him up, and I was going to ask him a little bit about his background anyhow. And Bryan, you were doing aerobatic flying with another team before the AeroShell team. And plus you were telling a very interesting story about kind of barnstorming across the country in a Stearman. So tell us a little bit about your aviation background and then your involvement with AeroShell.
Well, like Jimmy, I started kind of dreaming of this stuff when I was young, watched a lot of movies and that kind of thing. And I just like the cool old airplanes and never really considered it as something I'd be able to do for a living or a career or anything like that. I just wanted to be around it. Well, when I finally got around to flying, learning to fly, it wasn't until I was in college. But 10 years before that, I had the experience of being able to go to Oshkosh. I'd gotten involved with EAA and Civil Air Patrol and all that. And interesting story about that was one of the local EAA members had his corporate aircraft for his company was a Convair 440, and he volunteered to take the whole EAA chapter up to Oshkosh or whoever wanted to go. And so I ended up on that trip, and we took off, and we weren't airborne very long when we started letting down, and we landed at this place. I didn't really know what was going on, and we taxi up, and there's just huge crowd of people there, and we almost kind of taxied into a space in the crowd almost. And then the left engine shut down, and the door went down, the air stair went down, and this little guy comes running up the air stair with a parachute over his shoulder, and he gets to the top, throws his parachute and his bag in, and turns around and waves to this crowd, and they close the door up, and he comes and sits down next to me, and we'll come to find out it was Marion Cole. And I'd never met him before, and I'm from South Louisiana, down in Lafayette, and so I didn't know these folks were that close by. Another one of the heroes from my young air show attending years was Merle Gustafson, Steve's dad, and I didn't know anything about Steve or anything, but Merle was quite well known around here, and we got to see him fly a lot in his Corsair. So anyway, that kind of stuff kind of planted the seeds. But still, when I finally did get around to learning how to fly, I was really just trying to get the flying bug out of my system so I could, get back to school and earn a real honest living. And so
he's still working on that.
Exactly. So my buddy started a job flying freight and Beech 18s, and he'd say, "Yeah, you ought to come ride some." And I'm like, "You mean like old round engine airplanes flying through the night, like in the movies?" And he said, "Yeah, come on." So I started doing that, and that kind of led down the path a couple of years of just immersing myself. I took a break from school, immersed myself in it, and learned a lot about the airplanes and the engines and about flying. And then I got wind of an opportunity to go work as a ferry pilot for a local wing act. And guy had a 450 Stearman, and his ferry pilot wasn't going to do it anymore. So I snuck over there, started chatting with him, and before I knew it, he started talking like I had the job. And so that was my introduction to barnstorming, was ferrying his airplane around and just kind of keeping track of the maintenance for him. He was an IA, so he would kind of keep an eye on me, and the stuff that was beyond my reach, he would oversee. But so that was a lot of freedom, doing a lot of just cross country flying by yourself, and went to all four corners of the country, and it was just an amazing experience. So I did that for about 3 years, and that's when I got introduced to the pilots from the Red Baron Squadron. And I was making a joke one day, like, yeah, you guys hiring? And well, as a matter of fact, it worked out that they were looking for a couple of new pilots. And I went to work for them, and that was the opportunity. You talk about opportunities kind of falling in your lap. As Steve said, I don't think he and I were really looking at doing this kind of stuff for a living. But it was just the next adventure, the next thing to kind of get that flying thing out of my system, or at least the fun stuff, so that I could just focus on other things. And it was really fortunate because Red Baron had kind of like a farm team that did solely promotional flying and relocation. And however, they retrained everybody from the ground up. They took your basic flying skills, taught us formation, taught us their kind of aerobatics, taught us formation aerobatics slowly over time. But we also had the opportunity to, we did thousands of rides a year. When I just kind of did a round number spitball of it the first year, trying to figure out what it was, like 100 days of purely rides at 12 rides a day. Well, that's 1,200 rides. So what really built my skills was just that constant repetition. And it was the full profile. We take off in formation, do a formation maneuver, break off and do individual maneuvers, do a rejoin, and in a hurry, because the lead pilot was usually ready to go back, and you could get left behind. And then we'd come in, do an overhead approach and land. I mean, that's everything we do. And so we got all that thousands of repetitions. If you're not getting it after about 3 years of that, then you probably ought to be looking somewhere else. And,
absolutely. So you guys, I have so many thoughts that are going through my mind about what you guys do, but all of you have a passion for flying. And it sounds like, if I'm not mistaken, you all come the civilian track. None of you were military pilots, because am I correct about that?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
But a lot of what you guys do as the AeroShell Aerobatic Team are similar to, military demonstrations, like the Thunderbirds and Blue Angels and all that kind of stuff, in terms of tight formations and all the maneuvers you do and things like that. Would you say that all of this kind of really gelled in terms of the 4 aircraft team about 20 years ago, once you became the AeroShell team?
Well, I don't know. I think a lot of the background experience, it comes from the influences of, even my early influences for wanting to do it were, watching movies about the Blue Max and the, Red Baron and the World War I stuff. But I think each of us has been influenced by not just the military iconology, but the people the military people that we knew and that we grew up around. Our parents, World War II people,
and the Bob Hoovers and stuff like that.
Yes. And and then the way this air show community and really aviation community works, one day you're suddenly rubbing elbows with, not just rubbing elbows with, but they know your name, the heroes that you grew up watching, and it's kind of startling at first. I remember my first trip back to Oshkosh ferrying an airshow airplane in there. And I kind of got everything settled and was hanging out. And Leo Loudenschlager showed up and started getting his airplane all ready. He had ferry tanks on. And he turned around and said, "Hey, Bryan, come help me with this." And I'm like, how does this guy know my name? I mean, I've been around him a little bit, but I've never really, talked to him much. And so, that's how the influences get around, is that just everybody likes to share in this business.
So Jimmy and Steve, is this the star power you guys were telling me about in pre-show with Bryan? You guys said he had star power. Is this what he's talking about?
I'm gonna let Steve comment on that.
Well,
they just don't bug me when they just don't make me shut up when I won't shut up.
Yeah, it's definitely been an adventure. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, on a serious note, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say on a serious note about it though, so we have a lot of viewers that are either in school at an aviation university, or they recently graduated. They've been on track to most likely to be an airline pilot, or an A&P or things like that, but we'll keep it on the pilot side of things. And they're trying to figure out their next move. And I know that people watching right now are wondering, so if I wanted to get into aerobatic flying and airshow performing, what do you guys recommend? How do you do that? How do you get started with something like that? Do I start first taking aerobatic, flight lessons to learn the craft, etc.? So love for you guys.
Steve, why don't you take it?
Well, there's ways to get into this. Greg Kuntz has a decathlon, and they train aerobatics over there, and you stay at a bed and breakfast, and you can get your start there. Just decide whether you like to do this or not, but always make sure you find a mentor, someone to kind of guide you instead of just trying it all on your own, because you might get hurt. And listen to the people that have been here and done that. That's how I learned a lot, is by listening to the experienced people. And but you can get started in it. You just got to start doing the research. And like Bryan said, get in to know these people. They're not think they're above you or anything. Just push it, get where you want to be. Don't let anybody tell you no, and do the research, and hey, elbow your way in there.
Yeah, that sounds like it applies for that, and anything else you want to do in aviation is to start doing it and start to get to know people, find somebody to mentor you, and find the right person to give you some flight instruction on the basics of aerobatics and things like that. You guys are very much a team, and we were talking about that a little earlier, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that too, in terms of how important that is for you to gel. And maybe even one of you could just talk about your preparation, even at this level that you're at, and as many air shows as you have done and that you do, how you prepare for the show and things like that.
Yeah, well, first thing we figure out where the active runway is, which one we're going to be flying the show line at. We check the terrain and all that stuff. And we always do a walk around before we fly and make sure we're all in sync. And, Bryan and I'll point out the wind direction. Hey, I'm going to hesitate this pull for about 1.5 seconds instead of pulling, and you're going to have to go early and I'm going to have to go late. And you take all that stuff into consideration before we fly every single time, especially if there's an on crowd wind, we're going to move it out. Preparation is huge. Make sure your smoke valves are where they're supposed to be, your fuel is on show tank, and we all watch each other's back. We all make sure we watch each other's back along the way to make sure that things are done correctly.
And that's where our minds are at in the last hour or two before we fly. Is getting more and more focused on all those elements that we need to keep track of.
Yeah. So do you guys, I mean, I've been behind the scenes when somebody's getting ready to perform. Do the four of you go through your entire show? I mean,
Yes.
like kind of walk through it and
Yes.
talk through it.
And I'm gonna tell you what's even more important than that is debriefing. I tell you what, when we debrief, it could get pretty intense. You know, if somebody messes up, we're on them pretty hard. So one thing about this team is you have to be able to accept criticism, and if you can't, you're not going to make it. So
yeah, well, it's a safety thing. Yeah, it can make.
Mark used to have a statement: if you want to join this team, you have to be able to sit on a pineapple without making a face.
Okay.
In other words, you got to be able to take it.
You got to be able to take it.
And that goes for all of us. And but it makes you a better pilot if you can listen to criticism and learn from it. It makes you a better pilot.
Yeah, Jimmy, you were laughing, so I have a feeling you have some thoughts about that too.
Well, you know, I'd kind of like to go back to what Steve was talking about a little bit on the training and the you know, don't quit. And you know, when I showed up and led for that first year, obviously I was flying with my heroes. You know what I'm saying? I mean, these guys I had so much respect for and knew what they could do and everything. And here I am, the new kid. And they're trying to pound this thing, you know, it's drinking out of a fire hose to get up to speed and to keep it safe. And the main thing is just keep it safe. And, you know, we'll get better as we go. But it was, I wouldn't quit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can't overemphasize to people who want to get into this kind of flying or airlines or anything like you said in aviation is you set a goal and you get around people who are good and who are successful in doing what you want to do. In this case, the AeroShell team. And I learned from all four of them, you know, from Gene, five of them, you know, Alan, Mark, Steve, Bryan, Gene, you know, I learned things about how to fly the air show and where to cheat here to make this work and make this look right. And, you know, that's important, but I never would give up, you know, and I'd screw things up and I'm thinking, well, they're going to throw me out of here now. And they come back and pound me in a briefing and say, no, we can't have this. We got to do it this way. And, you know, like Steve said, you got to be able to take criticism, but I learned from that criticism and I'm learning from the best in the industry. So I've got to respect what they're telling me because they've been there and done it. And, you know, now we still learn every show we fly. It's like Steve said, we debrief and we learn something about every time we go up, something's a little bit different. I think that's one of the neatest parts of doing formation aerobatics is every show is different. You know, y'all are going up there and do a loop wing over the barrel roll, first three maneuvers, and we are. But because of all the weather, the off crowd, on crowd winds, Mark's, you know, turning it around this way because of certain situations. And we're all just responding to what he's doing, you know, following him through the maneuvers. And the amount of trust that we have for each other is tremendous because we are close together in that. And, you know, this business is not without, you know, messing up if you don't, you know, maintain your position and know what your limitations are. And thing that Steve has always stressed, and I really, really think this is an important statement, is you fly where you're comfortable. When you're starting out, Steve and Alan never flew as close as we are when they first started going, but they gradually got closer. And you reach a point when you're comfortable flying close that you can see the very minute maneuver, what the airplane is doing instantaneously versus if you're out 25, 30, 40 feet away, you can't see that subtle movement in the airplane. And once you get close and you're comfortable, then you can really learn with it. Steve's always, you know, said that, and it's a good safety.
Yeah. Bryan, you talked a lot about formation flying too. Anything you want to add to that?
Oh, wow. Well, it's something you don't want to just go out and try to teach yourself. It looks like something that a lot of people do go out and teach themselves, at least the basics. But you can make so much more progress by finding someone who's got the experience and has experience with a system, you know, with actual protocols and standards, so that you're not just feeling your way around. The same way with aerobatics. You know, a lot of people go out and teach themselves how to do loops and rolls, and some people end up getting hurt doing it. And so, you know, it's so much easier to just find, you know, someone who is knowledgeable. It doesn't take much to learn these things and learn to do them right.
Yeah, the same way we were all taught how to handle getting into a spin. Do you guys think that most pilots should, at maybe an early part of their training or some part of their training, have some type of aerobatic training, even if it's for an hour or two?
I'll take this one. So look, here's the overall issue is where people get in trouble is when they find themselves in a situation they're not familiar with. So if you've never been upside down, you find yourself upside down. Well, you don't have much time to kind of figure it out. So, you know, I'm definitely a backer of people getting as much experience or instruction as they can, even if it's just a weekend course, or you know, it's like the spin training. They didn't really require it when I was coming up, and it was. But my instructor was a true believer in it. We did a bunch of spins, but yeah, there's no replacement for having experience. A couple of examples, you know, you think about Sully Sullenberger, right? Okay, now I don't think he'd ever landed an airliner on water, but he had considered it. He had considered all the different kinds of options. Where I think a lot of people take off from an airport and they haven't really considered it. They're flying from island to island. They don't consider everything that's in between. And if they have an issue where they have to find a place to land, they've never considered it, and it takes precious time for them to figure out how to resolve it or how to find the best spot. Another example is just in what we do, the concept of all the repetition and experience. Jimmy used to say, Bryan, I wish I had, you know, just an ounce of your, you know, skill and experience. And I said, well, Jimmy, I don't know if you have enough time or money to get that experience, but you know, we'll work on getting you there. But what I learned is that a lot of what we do is reactive when we're flying close formation, doing loops and rolls and that kind of thing. A lot of times there's a lot of variables. It gets dynamic, different winds, or we've hit some pretty rough turbulence at times during the show. And when you're slow at the top of a loop, you can't be really thinking about it. You've got to be reacting already to what you're seeing. And if you have never experienced those things, I talk about these things kind of being on a continuum, these different little places. I'm sorry. I know what I'm trying to say. I know what's in my mind. I can see it. But, you know, if you've never been to the left or right of the correct path, then you only know the correct path.
Right.
You know, you're not going to fly. Everything's not going to be perfect every time to where that center path works out perfect. If you've never seen those outliers. So it helps to get as much practice and experience as you can, so you're familiar with those what I call outliers or different scenarios in any situation.
Yeah. When you were, Bryan, when you were flying the Stearman and you were Red Baron and flying with that team, did a lot of that experience contribute to what you know now in terms of what you learned with that type of aircraft versus the T-6 that you fly now?
Sure. As Jimmy pointed out, I had a very little T-6 time when I started with the team. And
yeah, I think Jimmy said an hour and a half or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Kind of put you on blast.
And well, and then I started out working with Mark. He trained me up. We spent several hours doing that, and then started working with the team immediately. So by the time we did I don't know how much time I had by the time we did the first show, but we did a lot of flying. And but the Stearman stuff, I'd flown all 4 positions in that program, and we trained everybody to be good in all 4 positions.
Oh, that's smart.
If as soon as you got comfortable in one position and didn't want to give it up, we'd force you to go to the other side, that kind of stuff, or force you to leave.
Keeps you sharp.
What's that?
That keeps you sharp.
Well, it keeps you sharp, but it keeps everybody sharp. Everybody knows everything about each position, so it gives you clues as to what's coming next, how lead is going to fly the next scenario, the next maneuver. We flew together so much that we actually knew the different flying styles of each pilot. So it was kind of like loading a program, like, okay, I can expect him to do this abruptly, at this point. Or okay, I'm going to like this because this guy's always smooth here, that kind of thing. And so those habits, and when you see something varying from those habits, additionally, you can start getting suspicious about, hey, is he doing okay? Did he get enough sleep last night? So yeah, these things.
Yeah, you guys get to know each other that well, huh?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like flying personality, sort of.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I'd done all of that stuff, and when I started with the team, Alan had gotten hurt, and it was mid-season. They were looking for somebody. I said, and so they brought me in, and the first thing was, well, where do you want to fly in the formation? And I said, well, it only makes sense to me since I have lead experience and enough of it that all I have to do is keep you in the middle of the box and fly smoothly. And you guys do what you've been doing for 25 years in your own positions and make me look good. And then, so that's how that started. And then later on, once we formed more of a team over time, it takes time for everything to gel. Well, then we started kind of moving towards the positions we're in now. And but yeah, the airplanes, the flying part is pretty much the same, just different speeds. And I had to learn how to put the landing gear down because I'd been flying, fixed gear for the majority of the previous 20 years. And so, but fortunately, our routine includes a maneuver for putting the gear out. So we do our last maneuver is a barrel roll where we throw the gear out. So that helped develop the habit. And but it's always in the back of your head,
Sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention that you were talking about Sully. I think he also had sailplane experience, if I'm not mistaken. So he was very comfortable with as comfortable as you can be when you lose all your engines and have to glide to the surface. So, but I do think you're right about him thinking about picking a spot for the water landing and everything versus what the ATC was suggesting, which was trying to go to one of the airports, which would probably been a total disaster. So,
Right.
as we get to the latter part of this show, I like to kind of go with each one of you and go back to things that I heard you talk about earlier. So I'm going to start with you, Jimmy. Jimmy, you kind of just flew right over it, but you mentioned that you flew helicopters and gave helicopter rides.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm talking to these guys about AeroShell Aerobatics, and he's talking about giving helicopter rides.
Well,
When did you get your helicopter
that's-
ticket, and what kind of helicopter did you train in, and what kind of helicopter were you giving rides in?
I got the bug for helicopters. I think it was around 2002. And I went to a place on Long Beach, Mississippi called Vortex Helicopters. It was owned by a gentleman named Joe Sharon. And I went down there and said, hey, I want to learn to fly helicopters. And I was living in Monroe, so it's a 4-hour drive down to the coast to learn how to fly helicopters. And I told him I want to get a commercial. And I learned to fly in an R22. And I actually owned the R44, and that came about. I went out to California with the chief pilot at Vortex at the time, and I wanted to ride back just to get the time in the 44. And as we're coming back across country, we got stuck in College Station, Texas with weather, and I had to drive home because I had an airline trip I had to get to. And I told my wife, I said, that 44 is really nice. If we ever wanted to, and we didn't own any airplanes or I owned the Yak then, and that was it. And I said, that 44 is really nice. Just got to come out of factory overhaul. And we bought that, and I ended up getting my commercial and my ATP and CFI and the helicopter, and flew it. And then I eventually sold it. And a good friend of mine, Dan Fordyce, now has bought a 44. Mark Henley, the lead pilot with the team, has a 44. And so I kind of got back into the helicopter flying. It's been a lot of fun.
It's
totally
that's pretty awesome. Just real quickly, much of a adjustment going back and forth between flying a helicopter and flying a T-6 Texan?
Well, they're totally different, but
Sure.
It didn't take me long to get back into the helicopter mode of things as far as being able to fly it again. I started getting up to speed. I had a good instructor, Craig Simone, down in New Iberia, Louisiana, and he was very experienced in the 44s, and he started working with me. And so, after about 2.5 hours, I was back where I could, hover it and feel safe in it, not totally proficient, but safe. And, now, I'm still learning, and you never stop learning in aviation. That's one of the greatest things. I love doing these check rides with these kids because, they're all psyched up about learning and wanting to know what I did and how I did it and why I did it. And I'm looking at them thinking, you guys have no idea how much fun you're going to have in aviation because it's such a in-demand, activity right now. The airlines are hiring, everybody's hiring,
Absolutely.
People tell you about crop dusters, how that shortage is.
It's wide open. I was just going to ask you too, when did you completely take flying for the airlines and then stop flying charter off the table and say, I'm going to fully do this 100% with the aerobatic flying?
Yeah, I was fortunate that, I had a great career. I worked for Northwest and then they merged with Delta and was able to retire from Delta. I had a great career in the airline. And I just wanted to do some more flying. And when I did that first year with the AeroShell team, I told my wife, I said, if there was any way that they were serious about trying to work me into this thing, that I would consider retiring, and was fortunate that I was able to do that. And it's been a blast. I'm the new kid. I'm the oldest one on the team, but I'm the newest one on the team as far as, I've been there about 10 years helping them. And it's been fun. I mean, we have a great time together. We're real close friends, and families know families and grandkids and all that. And that contributes to the experience that we have at the AeroShell team.
Sure. What did you fly when you were flying for the airlines?
I flew, started out on the 727, and I flew all 3 seats there, the flight engineer, co-pilot, captain. And then I went to the right seat of the DC-10, flew that, and then flew the left seat of the DC-10, and then left seat of the A330. I retired off the A330 Airbus.
Wow. I missed that part of your career. I must not have read the bio completely. That's pretty cool. You've run the full gambit with flying. Steve, crop dusting. You did a lot of it. Tell us about that kind of flying and what that was like for you as part of your flying career.
Well, that's the core of my flying, is ag flying. And it really turns you into stick and rudder pilot. and situational awareness and understanding everything around you while you're flying. I've got over 31,000 hours now. If I had to guess, at least 20,000 was ag.
Really? Wow. 2/3 of your flying was ag?
I would say so. A matter of fact, I sprayed yesterday. I like to stay current. I'm not doing it full time anymore. I'm the part-time guy, the backup guy, but I did it full time for 24 years.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
dodged a lot of trees and a lot of wires.
Yeah. If a young person listening said that they've been thinking about wanting to do crop dusting type of flying to either build time or just because they think it would be cool to do, what would you say to them?
I would say it's a lot better than people give it. We have a lot better equipment nowadays. We got turboprop engines with air conditioning. They're made to do a specific job. It's a lot safer than people realize as long as you pay attention. But that's with anything in life, is paying attention at all times to what you're doing. It's hard work. If you're not a hard worker, say you're just into clean fingernail flying, I call it clean fingernail flying. You got getting up later in the day and all that stuff, because it's challenging. It's long days and long hours.
Right.
When you're done, you're done. You know, usually we're done in October and get back started in February. But it pays very well. The ag pilots nowadays make very good money. And
yeah, you don't hear that much about it, but that's the points you just brought out are terrific about the equipment and that it's a different kind of ag flying than it was before.
Completely different. I started out in radials. I started out in a Pawnee. Then I went to a 450 ag cat, then a 600 ag cat, which is a biplane. Then I went to a turbine ag cat. And then I went into the turbine air tractors. And I've flown every variant of air tractor there is. Right now we're flying an 802. And this thing is phenomenal.
Didn't you do a safety video for air tractor?
I did. Air Tractor had me come out and do a safety video on how to safely fly the airplane. And I put my T-6 in some situations that ag pilots might find themselves in and showed them what not to do and how to recover from those situations that they might find themselves in.
Yeah. As we wrap things up, I wanted to do two things. First of all, can you guys just briefly each talk about a little bit about what the day in the life of an aerobatic pilot is like in terms of what you guys do as the AeroShell team, the traveling, the planning, just kind of give us an idea of what it all
like not this weekend, but the next, we're going to Canada. So the preparation, obviously, you got to get the AOPAs, you got to get the stickers, get your passport, get your flight plan going, understand where we're going. We're going to be looking at the weather right before we leave, send them all of our documentation on the airplanes and us. When we get there, airshow environment is wonderful. We meet a lot of people that love to do what you and I like to do. And we also meet young people that are getting into it. And we love to inspire them and talk to them and put them in the airplane and bring them around and show them what we do. And I get a lot of joy out of that. I've been flying long enough now that I've met people that were kids that became fighter pilots in the Navy or the Air Force. Airline pilots now. I was part of the JCs one time, and we gave it some rides. And I ran into that boy at Oshkosh. His name was Tommy Massey, and he's been flying airlines now for 30 years.
Wow.
And it all came about from that one ride that we gave him at that JC's meeting. When he made that first flight, he said, "That's it. I'm doing this." And how do you get started? And I told him, go to Monroe. They got a flight training department over there. Go to Ruston. They got a flight. Go to college there if you decide. And hey, he changed his life.
Let me piggyback off that as we wrap up and ask each of you to just give some final thoughts about what you would recommend to those who are wanting to pursue, whether it's aerobatic flying or any aspect of aviation career. All of you are obviously like seriously seasoned aviation professionals. So it'd be great to wrap this up with you guys talking about just your perspective and what you would recommend to these high schoolers and college and even post-college graduates that are trying to figure out what they want to do and that have a love for aviation.
Never let anyone tell you can't do it. If you put the time, the dedication in, you will surprise yourself what you can do. When I was learning how to fly, my dad was like very famous, and and I was told, "Oh, you can never do what he did. You'll never be able to do what he does." And what you have to do with that type of a situation is feed off of it. Makes you, hey, I'm more determined now. And by never listen to anybody that tries to hold you back. You can do it. You just got to just say, "No, I'm going to do this." Now, some people take longer to learn things than other people do. Well, guess what? Hey, that's life. And but never give up.
You think about what
go ahead, Bryan.
You think about all the things that you have to really kind of become an expert on, and how it broadens your education without it seeming like education. One of the great things about this, once I did start flying, was the rewards. I mean, I felt like I was going nowhere for a long time because I couldn't get very enthused or feel like I could find the right path for a long time with several different jobs, that kind of thing. But when I started flying, I remember the first day I accomplished something, and the feeling of that accomplishment was what drove me to the next day, and then the next, and then it's like, well, this is my path, because I'm like, I haven't never had so many successes in any endeavor I'd had before. And so it just went that way. And then all these things that you have to know, aerodynamics, weather, I mean, you become experts on these things, power plants. There's so many different things that you never considered you would understand or need to understand or want to. But then suddenly you're motivated, and just the experience of learning to fly is such a motivator just because of all those things.
Yeah. Jimmy?
Set a goal, surround yourself with people who are successful already in doing that goal that you want. Learn everything you can from them about what it takes to achieve what you want to do. And then how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. You just, you take it, because it's like, it takes time, but you just never quit. And you don't let anybody tell you, like Steve was talking about, that, oh, you can't do this or anything, because you set that goal, and no matter what, you get that Navy SEAL mentality where we're going to do this. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get through this. Because this is what I want to do. And, pursue it. Just don't quit. The only way you can fail in something like this is to quit. And I'm not saying if you throw up every time you go flying, you don't need to quit. I'm saying if you got a problem like that, yeah, that's different. to be able to, take the career and just stay with it. Just don't quit. Just keep pursuing it. And you can be rewarded with a fantastic career in aviation right now. I'm telling you, in all fields of it.
Absolutely. I mean, this industry is wide open for anybody that's interested in, as you said, in any aspect of it. So, guys, it's been really great to have you on. I feel like we probably could have done a 2-hour show because you guys just have a wealth of information. As we close up, you have a show you said coming up, and your next show is in Canada,
Montreal, Canada.
in Montreal, and you have a few more shows after that.
We got Montreal, then we do a show in Branson, Missouri for, I think it's for the Bass Pro Shops Big Cedar Lodge, and we're looking forward to that. Going to fly 4 days up there, Thursday through Sunday, and then we have a flyover at a football game, and after that, we're going to do Stuart, Florida, New Bern, South North Carolina, and we'll close the season out at Key Largo, Florida.
Gotcha. Which football game?
It's University of Louisiana at Monroe, and I think they're playing Texas State, and it's a veterans flyover that they want, and they want us to come over and do a smoke on and 3-ship, and it's a national anthem. So we're looking forward.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That'll be great. I was going to ask you guys in between shows. I didn't ask this earlier. Do you guys do much practicing, actual flying, or is it downtime for you? Or do you do other stuff?
We normally, during the season, we stay current with the number of shows we do.
Right.
This year, 25 shows. If we have a big break, though, we get together and do some practices. We also, there are practice days at air shows, some of the air shows. And also we do, a lot of times we do media rides and those type of things. So that we generally run through the first part of our routine there, and that covers 90% of getting tuned up for our regular routine. So,
yeah. Well, you guys keep inspiring the next generation of aviators with what you're doing, because it is amazing to watch your show, both your day and your night show, which I've enjoyed immensely over the years. So, but appreciate everything you guys do, especially on the inspiration side of things, and just what you do as very seasoned professional pilots. So,
well, anybody that's following us or anything, we've got an Instagram page and a Facebook page, and we enjoy interacting with you guys, with young pilots, and questions they might have about certain things or anything. Feel free to join us.
That sounds great. And if anybody contacts me, I'll be more than happy to forward them to you guys for them to talk to you and get some mentorship.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you again for being on All Things Aviation and Aerospace. I appreciate you taking the time. I wish you safe flying and hope you have a great show in Montreal, etc. That does it for us with this show. Thank you for watching or listening to All Things Aviation and Aerospace, the webcast and podcast for anyone thinking about pursuing a career in aviation. We also have archive episodes on all kinds of different other aspects of the show and things like that. And it's all available on the Private Air Media Group YouTube channel and Facebook page. And again, if you guys have any questions about anything from this show, feel free to shoot me a note, and I'll be glad to put you in touch with the AeroShell Aerobatic Team. I can't believe I still want to mess that up. Anyhow, the AeroShell Aerobatic Team that will continue performing all over and doing great things. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Until next time, take care, and we'll catch you soon.